اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمنا سبحانه والحمد لله ولا اله الا الله ولا حول ولا قوه الا بالله عن سبحانه وتعالى. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد والسلام وعلى عدد خلق الرضوان سيدنا أرجو ذلك ما جعل كل حافظ وقول أو يقرأ سمع ويسمع رضي الله عنه وعن أن ما فعلها رضي عنه وعن معكم. We stopped the lesson yesterday speaking about how these gatherings are connected to the gatherings of the Prophet through the Salasil and Isnad, through the chains of narration and the importance of these chains of narrations. What's very important to notice here is when the Quran mentions that these are clear signs which we have placed in the hearts and the chests of those who have been given knowledge. Many people really only find guidance when they come into contact with people who have these chains of narration. So, for example, there are the chains of narrations with regards to knowledge, with regards to ilm, which, for example, you find people confused. They can't really understand affairs, how to reconcile the deen with modern times. But if they come into contact with someone who academically has these chains of narrations, meaning they've taken their knowledge, then they find that their understandings now become aligned. And likewise, when a person comes into contact with someone who has inherited spiritual state which have come down through the chain of narration, then we find they have what's known as a spiritual experience, or they find what they are looking for in terms of spirituality. Likewise, with regards to dawah. So these three objectives of knowledge, spiritual purification, and dawah, they all come with their chains of narrations. If you find them combined in one person, then, as Imam Ghazali says, then you found great sulfur. You should stick to that person. And then Habib was speaking about how the souls of the prophets of Allah gave them the ability to move around, and the souls of the awliya and salihin. And this is not something that is strange. Maybe we can just spend a little bit of time now. Aqidah or some Aqidah people ask. So easy. Also, it's permissible for us to believe that a person's soul can move from place to place. In our Aqidah, and there is the Prophet himself explained that fact. When he went for the Isra and Mi'raj, he said that he saw Musa in his grave praying, and then Musa right behind him in Masjid al-Aqsa, and then Musa was in the sixth heaven. So the ability of the souls to actually move around is something not strange, because our belief is this falls within the bab of karamat al-awliya or the mu'jizat al-anbiya. And our aqidah has space for it. The most important thing to pay attention to is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that gives the ability. He is the one that works the standard. Nothing happens. No person, no human being, no created thing can do anything without the will of Allah. So when you talk about the karamat of the awliya, nothing happens out of the control of Allah. It's completely by His will, completely by His control. It's not something that people need to pay over much attention to. Other people take it to extremes, becomes the sole focus of their spiritual endeavors. Shaykh al-Jilani would say in his letters that the door of miracles is the first door of 1,000 doors of the path. You never get stuck in the door, then you won't go beyond that. You won't go beyond that. So Umar was explaining, and he said, فَرُوحُ مُحَمَّدٍ أَكْبَرُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ وَأَسْرَعُ وَأَوْسَعُ. The soul of the Prophet is greater than that, more powerful, faster, and more expensive. وَأَعْلَمُ قَدْرَةً عَلَى التَّنَقُّلِ وَالْخِطَابِ, and it has the greater to move around and to address and to speak to people. And we have this experience, obviously, of people who see the Prophet in visions. Imam Suyuti has a very nice book called Sharh al-Sudur, right? And if we read the books, even Ibn Qayyim has a book called Kitab al-Ruh, explain the unique abilities of the soul. And also the books that have been written about what happens after death. There have been many experiences of people. When Imam Suyuti mentions about someone who came across the grave of the killer of Sayyidina Ali, and he actually saw how he was, every time he came out of his grave, he was being pulled back and was changed. Many times the punishment of the grave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifested that even for the awliya or people who are even sinners, told them to get an idea of the warnings that would happen in the year after, or the punishment that would happen in the year after. So this is what is known as unveilings or knowledge of Rasul. Not everyone has access to it, but Allah opens it up for certain people. الروح المخاطبة من أهل الأرض والسماوات بالصلوات والتسليمات. So this soul of the Prophet ﷺ is the soul which receives the salutations from the heavens and the earth. All of the heavens and people on earth send salutations on the Prophet ﷺ. وإن الله يسلم عليه فتتلقى روحه سلام بارئ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in addition sends salutations on the Prophet ﷺ. What is the nature of the soul of the Prophet ﷺ? That at every instant it is receiving salutations from human beings. It's receiving salutations from the angels. And over and above that, it is receiving salutations from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. And if you want to try and understand the rank and nature of the Prophet ﷺ, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have managed to look at the verse, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا اللَّهُمَّ صَلِّ وَسَلِّمْ وَبَارِكْ عَلَيْهِ وَعَلَى آلِهِ. There's an Arabic terminology, they say, الْعَاقِلُ تَكْفِيهِ الْإِشَارَةِ. That an intelligent person will suffice by indications. The true nature of the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not revealed it completely. Right? But these verses give an indication towards the nature of the Prophet ﷺ. So if we have to just logically think, Prophet ﷺ said that whoever sends salutations upon me, then the angels bring their salutations. So if I come to you, I say, Muhammad, Anwar give salam, Zahid give salam, Nasan give salam, Nadan give salam, Nadan give salam. In an instant, I'm giving how many names? The processing power, as human beings, we cannot understand. This makes us understand that the nature of the Prophet ﷺ, he is a human being, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ إِنَّمَا يُوحَى قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ يُوحَى إِلَيْهِ. I am a human being, I have no form, but يُوحَى إِلَيْهِ. Which human being, which other human being يُوحَى إِلَيْهِ? Okay, so the nature of the process to process information is very, very different. And he indicated this when he spoke of the awliya. When the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet said in the Hadith Qudsi, narrated from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my servant continues to draw closer towards me. Famous Hadith, until I become the eyes which he sees, the ears with which he hears, meaning their hearing and their seeing is unique. Right? And again, according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives every person, at a particular time, at a particular place. When Haddad was asked about this, he says, do the awliya have knowledge of the unseen? He says, they have some of the knowledge of some of the unseen when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to open it up. Not unrestricted. This is a very important distinction. Some people, when they talk about the knowledge of unveiling, they think that this is something that's constantly happening 24/7. And this has led other people now to deny it because of the fear of them ascribing divine qualities to the awliya, and this is never the case. Never will the awliya, never will the anbiya ever come close to even an iota of the knowledge or the sifat and the qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted someone the knowledge of everything that happens in this earth is only a tiny, tiny iota of the entire universe. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given shaitan and iblis the ability to see what happens on the earth. إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُمْ. Allah says in the Quran that shaitan or the devil, Iblis, he sees you with his armies from whence you do not see. They have vantage from. And the hadith also states that every day the armies of shaitan come to him and say, what did you do? He says, this one, I made him do this, and I made him commit this sin. And he says, no, that's not a big sin. I made this one drink alcohol, no, it's not a big thing. This one says, this one, I made him divorce his wife, and he becomes very happy. So they have a vantage point, and this is what Allah gave the enemies, the shaitan, right? And the abilities of the awliya and the anbiya less than that of the shaitan. وإنه يسلم عليه فتلقى روحه سلام بارئه الذي أكرمه وجعله أقرب الخلق إليه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made you the most proximate to him, وأكرم العباد, and the most honorable of servants towards him. وإن الله ليسلم عليه وإن الملائكة ليسلمون عليه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angels send salutations upon him, وفي ذلك يقول عليه الصلاة والسلام, the Prophet ﷺ explained this by saying, وَمَا مِن مُسَلِّمٍ يُسَلِّمُ عَلَيَّ إِلَّا رَدَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيَّ رُوحِي حَتَّى أَرُدَّ عَلَى السَّلَامِ. And no person sends salutations upon me except Allah returns my soul to me, and then I will reply to his salam. And again, as we said, in these are indications. Many times the Prophet also mentioned certain things so that the nature of the Prophet's speech is that whoever hears it, everyone can understand. But each person takes from their speech according to their own. وقال رضي الله تعالى عنه الصباح متصل بالمساء. Umar then goes on to this next chapter, which talks about the importance of the continuation of one's deeds, the continuation of one's spiritual practices. Many times we have in our spiritual endeavors, not just spiritual endeavors, academic endeavors, whatever we do, we sometimes take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And this is why a person will never achieve a spiritual opening if they are not continuously on it, or if they are not continuously moving. They are in a continuum progressing every day. من استواه يوماه فهو مضمون. Hadith in Jalami that whoever's 2 days are equal, then he is a loser. The next day needs to be better than previous day. This is what Habib is going to explain in this chapter. الصباح متصل بالمساء. The morning is connected to the evening. والمساء متصل بالصباح. But the evening is also connected to the morning. هل من انفصال بينهما? Is there any separation between the separation between night and day, or are they continuous? They're continuous, right? This is one of the reasons which made some of the ulama say, or when they were pondering of why the earth is round, is because if the earth was flat, night and day would change suddenly. But the gradual nature is also an indication of. Okay, that's also another topic of discussion. هل من انفصال بينهما? There is no separation between them. ثم الناس في عالمهم هذا الكوكب الأرض لا يخلو وقت عن صباح ومساء. And taking that into account, all people on earth, on this planet of ours, at every instant, there is night and day coming across different people. Right? When we are coming in the morning, other people are now experiencing evening. Right? And this is the constant nature of this earth. وهذا يشير إلى معنى في الواحدية ومعنى في الإحاطة ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. And this is an indication to some of the meanings of the unity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His all-encompassing nature of knowing what happens. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of His, ولا يحيط, as He said in Ayatul Kursi, ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. And no one is able to encompass anything of His knowledge except according to His will, except what Allah allows people. ولذلك إذا كان وقوفك صحيحا على صباح معرفة أو صباح وجد أو صباح ذوق فلا بد أن يتصل بالمساء. So if you have attained to something of the ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or some spiritual experience, right, or spiritual tasting, if that spiritual experience or that tasting or whatever it is that you have achieved is correct, and you've achieved it in the morning, then it must continue in لابد أن يتصل بمسائه. وإذا صح لك ذلك اتصل بصباحه. And if that has also been correct, then it continues to the morning. And so these are not once-off things. The spiritual experiences, the spiritual tasting, academic endeavors, your revision, your good works that you are doing, your ibadah, your ta'ah, it is not something that happens in the morning and in the evening we are different people. Forget about it. That's why we have morning and evening du'as. And the same du'as that are read in the morning, we read them in the evening. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that your actions in the morning need to be, and therefore we would even read that, or we would hear the Prophet ﷺ when he mentioned, whoever reads this after Fajr, then this he will be protected till sunset. And whoever reads this before sunset, then he will be protected to sunrise. To such an extent that some of the awliya would even say that certain of the du'as of protection, their effectiveness is only put into place if a person does this at these specific times. So there's what's called the musabba'at. Musabba'at, for example, is reading Surah Fatiha 7 times, Surah Nas, Surah Falaq, Surah Ikhlas, Surah Kafirun, Ayatul Kursi, Salam, Prophet ﷺ, third kalima, in 2 forms of istighfar. right? 10 different adhkar 7 times. Imam al-Haddad used to encourage this as well. And Imam al-Haddad actually mentions when in his Wird al-Kabir, Wird al-Kabir takes a long time to recite, 20-30 minutes. He says, but if you fear the sun is going to rise, then read the Musabba'at first, because the Musabba'at comes at the end, like an indication that its effectiveness is only at this particular time. So obviously, if a person then forgets or doesn't, then you do it as soon as you can. وإذا صح لك ذلك اتصل بصباح ولا تزال بين الصبح ومساء. And this is the case, right? We are continuously progressing. Sabah, Masa, adhkar in the morning, adhkar in the evening, adhkar in the morning, adhkar in the evening. Revision in the morning, ibadah, all the good deeds, your worship. And then the experiences that flow from that continue to, right? You continue to experience them until they become states. Then, whether in the morning or in the evening, everything becomes one. But this is after years and years and years of istiqamah and steadfastness. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains this in the verse of the Quran, وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ خِلْفَةً. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who made night and day follow one from the other. لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَذَّكَّرَ. For whoever desires to take admonition, or أَرَادَ شُكُورًا, or whoever desires to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or be thankful to Him. وَكَذَلِكَ الْحَرَكَةُ فِي الدَّعْوَةِ وَأَنْوَاعُ الطَّاعَاتِ لَهَا صَبَاحٌ وَمَسَاءٌ. Likewise, we mention all the different forms of ibadah and worship, da'wah, calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It has its mornings and its evenings. What your relationship with the da'wah as well should be the same in the morning and the evening, meaning there is a continuum. وَاللَّهُ جَعَلَ اللَّيْلَ سَكَنًا وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا وَجَعَلَ النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we made the evening as a covering. وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا, and we made the day for going about. وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ آيَتَيْنِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, we made the night and the day 2 signs. فَمَحَوْنَا آيَةَ اللَّيْلِ. We covered the sign of the evening. وَجَعَلْنَا آيَةَ النَّهَارِ مُبْصِرَةً. We made the sign of the alama of the nahar mubsira, meaning it is the time when people go about doing the things we can see. We can go about our daily doings. لِتَبْتَغُوا فَضْلًا مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do that for the day? So that you may go and seek His grace, seek your provisions. وَلِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ وَالْحِسَابِ. And so that you may then know the number of the years and what we would know as the calendars. وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَصَّلْنَاهُ تَفْصِيلًا. Everything we've explained. So the whole purpose of night and day, and what we know is now time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. Why? So that you may arrange your ibadah, may arrange your ta'ah, your works and your good deeds. Right? And they would say, for example, even in the verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ. When you're finished with a particular work, what do you do then? Rest. فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ. Finish one thing, move on to the next. Habib Ali al-Mashhur, the late Mufti of Tarim, the elder brother of Habib Umar, he would mention in his lessons, and he would say that our father, Habib Muhammad bin Salim al-Hafidh, and this is the state of many of the awliya. He says, we never ever saw him in the house in a state of rest. He never came home and just lied down. Right? He was always involved in something. If he wasn't writing fatwa, he was doing tahqiq, he was editing some manuscripts. If he wasn't doing that, he was sitting with the children and teaching them. If he wasn't doing that, he was sitting with his family. If he wasn't doing that, he was receiving guests. If he wasn't doing that, he was receiving students to actually teach. And the only time he would sleep would be at the specific times they would take rest. Now, al-Haddad as well, they would say he never entered his house without a reason. Right? And this is the understanding that the home is a place of laziness. The home is a place of rest and comfort. So they go to the house to take the rest which they need for. Al-Haddad for 17 years, he didn't sleep in his house. He slept in the masjid, in the khalwa of Masjid al-Hujayra. Right? Until today, we know of even some students. I met one of the students who graduated from Dar Mustafa, because if you stay in Dar Mustafa and you're sleeping there, you are a very, very hectic tertib of, tahajjud and fajr and lessons and morning, and then your whole 24 hours. You can go 24 hours without missing and wasting a single second. But now when you graduate or you get married now, the slacking starts. So I was speaking to one of the brothers and said, what have you been doing? Like, how have you been, to keep up with tertib? He says, since I got married, I never sleep at home. He goes and he sleeps, and so he was supervisor of one of the branches of Dar Mustafa.
right? And he could sleep at home, but he says, my mujahid, I will sleep at home. Because just I know if I sleep at home, then I might miss Azkar in the morning. Yeah. فبقي على قدر القرب منه فهم التفصيل عنه. And according to a person's closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person is then able to understand the meanings of the verses of the Quran and the meanings of the verses, and understand the ayat also in the universe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فعجب لمن يؤمن بالله وقرآنه يتلو مثل هذه الآية. Right? And it's amazing for someone who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and reads these verses. ثم يتعجب في سعة معرفة المقربين. And then they become amazed at the vast expansiveness of the knowledge of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in explaining these verses as well, He's given an indication that He has created night and day for this particular reason, that people may remember Allah and come to know Him. And if a person is on this continuous improvement, do they just stay stagnant? Of course, they are increasing to such an extent that we would hear from the anfas of the Salihin that they would be improving in their spiritual states, not just in every single day and night, but in every single breath. وإذا لم يتلقى التفصيل ذلك العبد المقرب من ربه فيكون الله قد فصله لمن. And if a person then does not understand the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the universe and the signs in the Quran from the ones whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the special rank with Him. Ala inna awliya Allah. If a person does not understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and does not take knowledge of the Quran and about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His awliya, and there are no awliya who people to accept that they are ulama. Because the first step is the sharia. A person has to master the sharia, then the tariqah, and then the haqiqah. Imam al-Ghazali says a person who desires these high spiritual states, he will never attain it until he becomes an imam in at least one madhab. Means he becomes extremely proficient in, meaning he completely understands the sharia. Right? And so if people don't take the knowledge from such people, then who are they going to be taking it from? Inshallah ta'ala al-himma fataruhu ila al-qimma. Inshallah, Allah allow people's determination to rise and increase so that they may reach spiritual heights. كان سيدنا العيدروس دائما يتمثل بقول الشاعر. Imam al-Aydrus used to always mention these verses of the poet. على قدر أهل العزم تأتي العزائم وتأتي على قدر الكرام المكارم. According to a person's determination, he will achieve great things. ويأتي على قدر الكرام مكارم. And according to a person's generosity, he will then honor people. وفي ذلك إشارة إلى ما شرع الحق تعالى لأرباب الإيمان من أهل الذوق والتمكين من اقتحام اللجج الوجهات بالصدق والكلية. And in this is an indication of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made for the people of Iman, and the people who desire spiritual states, and their establishment in those states. Why? In their taking on these endeavors with sincerity. اقتحام اللجج الوجهات. Habib describes it as an ocean with waves, right? And this, what they desire to achieve of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or spiritual states, whether it's academics, da'wah, they face these things as one would face the waves of the ocean. They dive in with complete conviction. بالصدق والكليات, with the entirety. وألا يقنعوا ولا يزهدوا في إفراد للقصد. And they are never wanton. They don't let their guard down in their sincerity. Ifradan lil qasd is the definition of sincerity. Their sole intention is to do it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ومع اقتحامهم لتلك البحور لا يقصدون منها شيئا. And in their diving into these oceans, and the oceans of spiritual states, the oceans of da'wah, the oceans of academics, have many wondrous things. In them diving in these oceans, they still don't pay attention to all these wondrous things. What's their goal? Their goal is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, coming back to what Imam Shaykh al-Qadr Jilani said, that the miracles on the path is only, if you get distracted there, then it's not for you. فما اقتحامهم لتلك البحور لا يقصدون منها شيئا. Even though they experience these wondrous things, they don't turn towards it. ولا يقفون عند شيء منها. They don't even stop. They don't even stop to look, right? In the Isra and Mi'raj, when the Prophet ﷺ was going for the Isra and Mi'raj, right? What did Allah SWT, مَا زَاغَ بَصَرُ وَمَا طَارَ. He did not even, his eyesight did not even. And also we know that when he was on the Isra and Mi'raj, that the while he was traveling, there was a call. He heard someone calling, and he didn't even turn to them. He asked Jibril who was that. He said this was the call of Nasara. And had he turned, the entire Ummah would have become Christian. And likewise, the same thing happened with the Jews. Also, in a person's spiritual sense, a person is now worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in private. Do you pay attention to the things that happen, feelings? Do you worry about a sound that you heard or a voice? Or not? If you're worried about that, you're too concerned about yourself. You're not worried. The purpose of the dhikr also in Khalwa is to even forget that you are the one doing the dhikr. And so no matter what happens, they realize, and even Imam al-Haddad, many of the ulama, they mentioned that the natural processes that would occur, right? These are signs that a person is on the right path. Imam al-Sha'rani also as well, when he speaks about the khalawat that the awliya would sit into, and he explains the 25 different stages. And they would say they only explain this so that when someone comes out of their khalwa and they tell you that this happened, we know that they've experienced the right spiritual opening. But it was never there for a person to pay attention to. Right? So if someone tells you, I reached, for example, Durban, you can tell him which route did you take. You don't know whether he took the right route. And so you're in Joburg and he tells you, I reached Durban. So you tell him now, okay, did you pass by this? Did you see that? Did you see that? Did you go by Harrismith? Okay, then you know he's reached. Because you can't tell someone else's journey, what they've been through. But if they explain that the path was right, when I imagine the guy who went to Harrismith and then he got stuck there and he started to spend some time and he saw some nice flowers on the road, he won't reach his destination. But we need to know that they pass by these stages to understand that they've actually reached, and it's an ocean without a shore. فمع اقتحامهم لتلك البحور لا يقصدون منها شيئا ولا يقفون عند شيء منها هم يقفون عليها ولا يقفون عندها. They stop on it and they don't stop at it, meaning they use it as a means to get to the next place, right? But they never ever get stuck with it. فيقفون عليها اعتبارا بها. They stop upon it, taking lessons from it, right? وعبورا بها, merely to use it as a means of continuing their journey. ومرورا عليها, passing by. مطالعة في صفحاتها, taking lessons from it. واطلاعا على أسرارها, also gazing into its secrets. وعروجا بها وعليها ومنها. وهكذا الله يثبت أقدامنا وإياكم. And so the mere purpose of it is for a person to know what's beyond it. What lessons can I take from it? And as we hear from many of the Shaykh as well, that many of these things would occur to a person as a form of encouragement. Right? Human beings, they get bored, right? But when they are given some sort of encouragement, they are able to continue their journey. Umar goes on, he says,
in the beginning, I had to change it. I was struggling to think when I was reading it, what does this have to do with the morning and the evening? The beginning part.
Yeah, so person's actions, the ibadah, the ta'ah needs to be continuous. So what you do, you can't, for example, have works, spiritual works in the morning and you don't have any spiritual works in the evening. You can't be concerned about da'wah in the morning, meaning the istiqam. Right? And وَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ. That you finish one thing, you go on to the next. There shouldn't be any time in your day or in the evening where you are relaxed. You could have spent the whole day achieving something great. But when the evening comes, you slack, you lose everything that you want. Especially if a person falls into sin, over and above negligence. وقال رضي الله عنه كلام الناس وما يصدر من ألسنتهم وأفواههم وإنطاق مصدره الخلاق. So people's speech and whatever comes forth from their tongues and their mouths, what is that? وإنطاق. What is إنطاق? Intaq is Allah making or giving that person the ability to speak. It is the speech actually, who is the one actually speaking, right? That person is speaking, but who is the one that made him speak? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Masdaruhu al-khallaq. Its origin is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, because on the day of Qiyamah, when a person will be called to bear witness, and he will be asked, did you commit this particular sin or that particular sin? They'll say what? They'll say, I didn't commit a sin. And then what will happen? يوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم. That day we will seal up their mouths and their hands will speak and their feet will speak. And then they will say to their hands and feet, we will only keep him quiet so that we can protect him. قالوا أنطقنا الله الذي أنطق كل شيء. They would say Allah is the one who gave us the ability to speak, the one who gave the ability to everything to speak. And the suduri هذه الكلمات. This now is an important indication. Habib is going to speak to about the importance of da'wah and what happens when we do da'wah. Specifically the da'wah of speaking and reminding people. And the nature and the connection between a person's tongue and their heart. To the extent that they would say that if you don't have, or if there is a quality that you want to achieve that you don't have, go and give da'wah to it. Right? Because then the internalization will occur and you'll begin to feel shy that how can I speak to people about tahajjud and I'm not on tahajjud. Right? And Imam Haddad will say if you are not doing something and you say, okay, you know what, but because I'm not doing it, I can't call people to it. Right? He says now you've committed 2 sins. If you're not doing it, that's 1 wrong. But now you're not even doing your duty of da'wah, that's 2 sins. And then the question is always asked, but you know, is that fall onto I'm calling people and not acting on my own knowledge? Habib explains, he says, if a person is calling to something and they're not doing it, but in the deepest recesses of their heart, they regretful, they desire it, want to, this is a good sign. The problem is of someone who is complacent, meaning they're not even calling themselves to account internally, right? But then they go in and speak to people. This is the warning in the hadith comes. In the suduri هذه الكلمات, when these words leave our tongues, هذه الألفاظ, these words come off our mouths, تحصل التجاذبات واتصالات. There is a pulling. There is almost an effect between the heart and the tongue. تحصل التجاذبات واتصالات بين القلب واللسان. There is then a connection, right? And it's almost like a string. When one pulls, if someone's holding a string on the other end and someone pulls it, what happens? Right? There is this ebb and flow of the words, but also there is a sort of like a magnetic effect that exists between the tongue and the heart. أي بين الباطن والظاهر. There is then an effect that takes place between the external and the internal. وبين الروح والجسد, between the soul and the body. وبين عالم الغيب والشهادة, in between this ephemeral world, the external world, and the unseen world. وتحصل في العالمين مما يتعلق بذلك الناطق والمتكلم شؤون. And then what happens? In both worlds, things happen connected to what that person said, the person who is speaking. By merely speaking, things are happening in this world and in the internal world, between your heart and your tongue, soul and your body. وهذا ذكر الحق الهداية إلى القول الطيب. ولهذا ذكر الحق الهداية إلى القول الطيب. For this reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He mentioned hidayah and mentioning calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He described it how? By mentioning a good word, قول الطيب. فقال عن أهل ذلك المقام الشريف. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then described this great honorable station. وهدوا إلى الطيب من القول. These people who are the people of Allah, the ulama, those who call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how do they call to Allah? وهدوا إلى الطيب من القول. They have been guided to use pleasant speech. And this is one of the signs of someone who is truly a da'i, and someone who is a caller to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he's also a person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that their da'wah encompasses what? طيب من القول. Pure words, soft speech. Right? Any person who claims to be a da'i or an alim, rejecting the religion, but there is bada'ah, okay, they speak, they disparage people, they mock, alright, they swear, they call other people by names. This is the biggest sign that this person is completely disconnected and off the path. هُدُوا إِلَيْهِ فَاهْتَدَوْا وَهَدَوْا بِهِ. Okay, they have been guided to pure speech. فَاهْتَدَوْا, they took that guidance, right, and they are able to then guide other people. وَالطَّيِّبُ مِنَ الْقَوْلِ, what is pure speech? مَا كَانَ أَنْسَبُ لِلْحَالِ, what is most appropriate for that particular situation. And this was also one of the sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ, when we read his seerah. In every situation, when he was faced with a certain condition, or when someone asked him a question, he gave the most appropriate reply that anyone could have given for that particular situation. And that also causes a person to wonder, right? And this is the state also with the ulama and the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they bring what is most appropriate for that situation. And in the definition of hikmah, when they ask what is wisdom, how do they describe wisdom? Is putting everything in its place, right? Everything in its specific place, meaning this could be appropriate, but not for this situation. That's not hikmah. You could have said this particular thing, but this wasn't the time to say it. That's not wisdom. And so what is طيب من القول, what is pure words? ما كان أنسب للحال, what is most appropriate for every particular situation. والشأن الذي فيه المتكلم, right? With regards to where that speaker finds himself. So if you go to give da'wah in a certain locality and people are not reading salah, for example, right? And you start speaking about great spiritual stations, then obviously this is, right? This is not طيب من القول. You go to a people who have, you're going for an azah, you're going to give someone condolences, because someone has passed away, and you're going to speak, right? And you don't speak about, for example, you don't speak about death, you don't speak about the hereafter, you don't speak about the rewards that come with sabr, and you start speaking about something else. This is not طيب من القول. فما كان أنسب فهو أطيب. Whatever is most appropriate for that situation, that becomes the purest speech. وقد يكون ذلك القول الأطيب والسكوت في كثير من الأحوال. And that pure speech in many cases might necessitate what? Silence. That you don't reply, you don't speak, right? Because where is speech? Speech is in the heart. إنما الكلام لفي الفؤاد وإنما جعل اللسان على الفؤاد دليلا. Speech lies in the heart, and the tongues have only been made guides as to what lies in the heart. ولحصول هذه الشؤون عند التكلم والمخاطبة بمعنى عند إنطاق الحق للسان اللحمية متصلة ببضعة قلبية لها حبال إلى سرائر غيبية, right? And so when these things start happening, when a person speaks, right? Meaning when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows and causes this person to speak, meaning when the words come off his physical fleshy tongue, which is connected to his heart, there are ropes, there are strings leading to the leading to seeing things of the unseen. Meaning your speech, just by your speaking, you are affecting things in the unseen world. That is why a person is taken to account for everything that comes off their tongue, right? تتواصل العوالم الشهودية بالغيبية. There is now this connection between the external world and the internal world. فتحصل الشؤون في العالمين. Things then start happening in both worlds. لها تعلق بذلك الشخص الناتج, which are connected to that particular person. So when you go and you remind people and you call people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you are reminding them, people remember Allah, people come back to Allah and ask Allah for forgiveness and do not, what happens? Right? We just think it is reminding people. There are things happening in the unseen world. There are things happening between your heart and your tongue, right? And if you are there and your intention is sincere to rectify people, what happens? You become rectified. من هنا كان للكلام أقوى الأثر وأعظم الخبر في استقامة السير. And in this regard, speech became the strongest means or the strongest effect, or has the greatest effect in bringing people back to the path of keeping them steadfast. Meaning, the greatest form of da'wah happens how? Happens with the tongue. There are many forms of da'wah. There's da'wah with the pen, there's da'wah through different, means a person can even. But the tongue has the greatest form and the greatest effect. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, when he came with his da'wah, how did it come? Even memorization. If you memorize something from hearing it, meaning someone else is reciting it to you, or you can say even, for example, you're listening to something constantly in the car. What you memorize through listening, you memorize greater than if you had to actually sit in, just rote fashion. Right? The effect of getting that word on your heart through your ears, that has a great effect. وأعظم الخبر في استقامة السير وتطهير الضمائر. And this has the greatest effect in bringing a person's spiritual state back to its norm. وتطهير الضمائر, in the purification of the heart. وتنقية السرائر, also the purification of one's inner spiritual states. وتنوير البصائر, illuminating their inner perceptiveness. وتصفية عن القدورات, and removing all the pollution of the heart. Right? What happens when you listen to a person who is one of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You just listen to their speech and automatically there's some things start happening and you start wanting to change your life. You start taking yourself to what's happening. This is external speech, but there was an effect right into your heart, meaning this connection between the external and the internal worlds. Because the heart, not this physical fleshy substance, the heart or soul is of which worlds? So it's into the spiritual world. But speech has the effect of traversing the external world into the spiritual. And the heart has ears and the heart has the effect of speech, and now the importance also of giving down. وكان في اعوجاج هذه اللسان أكبر الأثر في ترادف الظلمات. And if this person's tongue is crooked, meaning this person has not maintained good speech, it has the greatest effect in causing darkness. The greatest misguidance happens also from the tongues. And as Habib Umar says, that the disunity in the Ummah happens from the tongues of the ulama. Right? If people don't control their tongues, your tongue can either be a form of guiding people and bringing them closer to Allah, or you can send people further away from Allah. That is why in one of the traditions described in the Prophet, he would say that I fear for other than Dajjal more than I fear for Dajjal for this Ummah. Dajjal was the greatest fitna and will be the greatest fitna that any nation ever experienced. But he said, I fear for this Ummah more than I fear for Dajjal. With regards to who he said, misguided scholars, people they can talk the talk, right? But their hearts are barren. وكان في اعوجاج هذه اللسان أكبر الأثر في ترادف الظلمات وتواكب جيوش الغفلات, and creating armies of negligence. A person just with their tongue can cause people to become negligent. توسيع وتكثيف الحجب, and also creating veils instead of now unveiling, is creating veils upon people's hearts. إلى غير ذلك من المكاره الظاهرة والباطنة, right? And many other forms of dislike things in internal and the external. فصار للسان شأن وأي شأن قال عنه سيد الأكوان. And so this tongue then has an extremely, you can say, dangerous and a very important place. What did the Prophet say? ألا أخبرك بملاك ذلك كله. The Prophet spoke of the greatest, he spoke of the greatest levels of Iman, and to read Salah on its time, and he explained everything of the Deen. He said the Deen has its uppermost portion and lowermost portion, the very, very famous hadith, right? And then what did he say? ألا أخبرك بملاك ذلك كله. Shall I not guide you to that which is the controller of all of that? Your entire religion, what controls it? كف عليك هذا. Withholding your tongue. A person who cannot withhold their tongue, by listening to a person's speech, you can tell their state of Allah, just by what comes of a person's tongue. And by extension, in today's times, not what comes of the tongue, but what comes of the fingers, right? Because what you type is speech, because it comes from the hand. What you want to also say is what you type. الله أنطق كل شيء ولكن أنت أنطقك على وصف مخصوص. Allah gave the ability to speak to all things, right? When we spoke about yesterday how even the lizard spoke, and the tree trunk spoke, and then the day of Qiyamah also different things would speak. So Allah gave the ability to speak to different things. لكن أنطقك على وصف مخصوص, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the ability to speak in a very specific way. ثم يستشعرون نعمة الله عليكم في أن هيئة النطق وصورته من ألسنتكم شابهت هيئة النطق من صفحة القلب. And then you need to bring to mind and feel the blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with, in that He allowed you to speak in the same manner, with the same forms and words with which He chose speech for His most beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَتِلْكُمْ خُصُوصِيَةٌ وَزِيَةٌ. That is indeed a very special distinguishment. And that is why the ulama paid so much attention to what? To the science of tajweed, how you recite the Quran. And they would even, when they talk about even the makharij of huruf, the dad, where is the dad pronounced at the side of the tongue, touches this part of the palate. You're pronouncing the ta, it's the tip of the tongue touching the place between the back of the tongue and incisors meet the top of the palate. Precisely why? They were so particular that even when you pronounce the words of the Quran, it must be as close to the way the Prophet ﷺ pronounced the Quran. And one of the biggest blessings of the Quran is when you recite the words of the Quran, you are reciting the exact, your tongue and your lips, right? And that voice is pronouncing the same sounds as the Prophet ﷺ himself, and not just the Prophet ﷺ, but the Sahaba. You want to connect with anyone of the pious of the past, or any of the believers, you recite the Quran. And you are all doing the exact same thing with your tongue. And if that connection you said now exists between the tongue and the heart, it's spiritual world, what happens when you recite the Quran, right? You're connecting yourself not just in it. That is why they would even recite the Quran in circles, the tahazzub. They would sit in circles of 7 or more or less, and each one would take a portion to recite the Quran. It used to be a practice also of the Sahaba that they would, when they would gather, they would say, remind us or let us renew our iman. They would ask someone to recite the Quran. We do the same thing when we have gatherings and functions. What do? We will begin with, what is the purpose of it? It's to bring people's hearts into unison. Over and above all the other secrets of the Quran. Umar then goes on to speak about this was a gathering which some first batch of students, or one of the batches of students, were actually completing the Minhaj, which is a book in Shafi fiqh, one of the last books in today's times that is read in Shafi fiqh, right? And they had gone to the place where Imam al-Muhajir was the first of the Ahl Bayt who came to Hadramaut. He's buried in a place called Husaysiyah. It says, مَا تُرِيدُونَ أَن نَقُولُ لَكُمْ وَلَنَا وَإِيَّاكُمْ سَنَوَاتٍ. What do you want us to tell you? And us and you for all these years, نَسْمَعُ فِيهَا صَدَى صَوْتِ الْمُنَادِ. We have been hearing the call or the echo of the caller. We spoke yesterday about this, right? What can we tell you? And we have been hearing time and time again the call of the caller, the echo of the caller. وَدَعْوَةُ هَذِهِ بِحَقِيقَتِهَا يُوصِلُ صَدَى صَوْتِهَا في العالم إلى الخلق أرباب الاختصاصات. Right? In this da'wah, this calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, its reality is conveyed to people how? Who conveys it to arbab al-ikhtisasat? Those people who have been chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone has, we say when you study medicine, you specialize, right? You specialize in medicine, you specialize in whatever you get your PhD, right? And the da'wah also has its people who have their PhDs, right? And it's those people who convey the original echo of the speech or the calling of the Prophet. So who conveys it to this world? The arbab al-ikhtisasat, those who have been chosen. مِنَ الَّذِينَ يُهْدِيهُمُ اللَّهُ عَلَى ظَهْرِ هَذِهِ الْأَرْضِ. Those people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifests as lamps of guidance on this earth. When they speak, they are echoing that original speech of their teachers, of those going all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. And that is why it has the effect of people's hearts, because it's connected with this unbroken chain through not just the knowledge, but the spiritual states. يُبَلِّغُونَ النَّاسَ وَيُوصِلُونَ إِلَيْهِمْ هَذِهِ الْمَعَانِي. They convey to people the meanings of that speech. فكل ما يوصلونه إليهم بهذه الألسن الخلقية، بهذه الألسن اللحمية، بهذه الألسن الجسدية هو الصدى لحقيقة ذلك النداء. So everything that they speak with their physical tongues, it is an echo of the realities of that original call of the Prophet ﷺ. والمنادي الذي يقول عنه رب, right? And the original caller whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about it, ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان. The dua of the believers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those who achieve this unveiling, what do they say? ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا. O Allah, our Lord, we have indeed heard the caller calling to faith. هو المخصوص من حضرة القدس بدعوة الخلق كلهم. The Prophet ﷺ, he was, right? What was he? He was chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, from the holy presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to call all of creation to him. So the Prophet ﷺ's call we spoke about yesterday was not just to beings but to jinn and to all of creation. And the scholars would even say that the Prophet ﷺ was sent not just to human beings, but he was sent also to the inanimate objects, right? And they would say even the angels, right? And even though the angels don't need to believe, right? But out of honor, he's calling, or he's being sent to the angels as a form of honor for the angels as well. وهو الذي جعله الحق سبحانه وتعالى السبب الموصل لحقائق ندائه لأربابه. وهو الذي جعله الحق سبحانه وتعالى السبب الموصل. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the Prophet ﷺ the means through which these realities then would go to the hearts of those who would take on that responsibility to convey to those afterwards. Again, these chains of narration, or what you can call the spiritual inheritance. فيبقى عامة الخلق على ظهر هذه الأرض تقوم عليهم الحجة بسماع هذه الأصوات. And so all people on the face of the earth, the proof lies against them when they hear these words. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, when he came to his people were in ignorance. But by him calling them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what happened? Do they now have an excuse in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say that we didn't hear? They can't, because the Prophet came. Likewise, the Sahaba, when they went to whichever particular towns and cities, and they called people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, did those people have an excuse? No, and likewise. So in today's times, those people who are the spiritual inheritors, and they are calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we hear about them and we know about them. Do you have an excuse in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say that no one reminded us, no one taught us? So in every generation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would ensure that there are people who are there to guide mankind. And therefore, the only person who is not guided is the insincere one. Right? Because if a person was sincere, Allah would guide them, and they would know who the lamps of guidance are. ووصول هذا الصدى على أيدي المبلغين إليهم في أشكال مختلفة. And so there is a proof against people when they hear these spiritual inheritors who are now calling people to Allah in all the different forms that this da'wah takes. كل قول من تلك الأقوال لا يفيد الإفادة. This is a very important point, right? كل قول من تلك الأقوال. All of those speeches that people do in da'wah, لا يفيد الإفادة. It does not benefit ولا يؤثر الأثر, and it does not have the effect إلا إن تم ذلك بارتباط واتصال بشيوخ من ورثة الحبيب صلى الله عليه وسلم. All of that will not have an effect unless it has been what? It has been, the cherry on the top of all of this calling and da'wah is that they are connected through mashayikh. They are connected through the chains going back through the inheritors of the Prophet's fathers. So someone can be a da'i and call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he has not come, he has not taken his knowledge, he has not been given. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes also Prophet in the Quran, he says, وَدَاعِيًا يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِيُّ إِنَّا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ شَاهِدًا وَمُبَشِّرًا وَنَذِيرًا. O Prophet, we have sent you as a witness, a bringer of glad tidings, and a warner. وَدَاعِيًا إِلَى اللَّهِ بِإِذْنِهِ. And a caller to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how? By his permission. And they will also say if a person wants to then be a caller to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he needs to be given the spiritual license, or he needs to be given the permission by the spiritual inheritors. Not necessarily I give you permission, meaning you go and you take from them and then do da'wah and see the difference. Because now you are calling not because of yourself, or you're not calling to yourself, but you understand the whole purpose of this spiritual chains and taking from this spiritual states is to then realize that I'm not even the important thing in this matter. And the whole problem with da'wah in the world today is people calling to themselves, people calling to their organizations, people calling to their own interpretations, because they are not connected to these spiritual chains. One of the scholars was also asked, and he says, what then happens with people who are connected to spiritual states? Shaykh Kolia, he said, he asked his Shaykh about people who were connected to spiritual guides, but then they went off the path. I think one of the reasons he gave for that was they did not absorb the spiritual state of the Shaykh before actually going in. And that is when you seek permission, meaning the person doesn't go until the teacher tells you, I'm not ready for the teacher to go, or to go and do and know your limits. One of the other problems is people going beyond their limits. You're not a master in fiqh, you go and you call people to Allah, don't get into fiqh matters. Tell people, I don't know, this is something. To remind people about Allah and for them to be, everyone is to be reminded about their salah, their zakat, their relationship with their parents, being, their business dealings, staying away from sin. Anyone can. Now, you asked about a specific matter in fiqh. Say, I don't know, this is not my specialization. People go wrong also is because now they want to delve into avenues which is not their specialization. أولئك الذين لهم قلوب أصغت إلى حقائق النداء الذي توجه لهم من الملك الأعلى سبحانه وتعالى. They are connected to the mashayikh who are the inheritors of the Prophet ﷺ, whose hearts have paid attention to and absorbed those realities of the call, right, or the original call, which was directed to them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And meaning they also have the understanding and the deeper meanings of the Quran. In every generation, the secret of the Quran is not that it lies in its pages, but that their hearts were not just memorizing, but their hearts were understand and have taken those steps. So when these people pass away, and there are no longer hearts available on this earth to bear those realities of the Quran, which is the spiritual inheritance, the Quran will then be lifted off the pages. إلا أن الحق سبحانه وتعالى أناب النيابة المطلقة في بلاغ نداءاته حبيبه المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم. Right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the general permission for the Prophet to be his deputy, be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deputy in conveying this message to people. ثم أظهر من ذلك الحبيب هؤلاء الذين أسمعونا. Then from after the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then manifested his spiritual inheritors who then convey his message to the people. وأوصلوا إلينا حقائق هذه الدعوة, and they are the ones that then gave us or conveyed to us the realities of this da'wah. And we find this many times. People, like even people that unfortunately that maybe growing up, they were told certain things, or their parents told them certain things, right? And they went to school and university, they went off the path, and then when they come back to the path or they connect with true Mashaykh, they say, but this is the same things we've been told all the time. Right? But there's a different vote to it, because it's coming from where? It's coming from that connection. And this is why we need to always connect ourselves to the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with these unbroken chains. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us tawfiq. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاكم الله خيرا.